Hello, and welcome back to another document deep dive. This time I will take a look at one of the most unique divisions that the Germans had in their roster. In fact, it was literally unique, the only one of its kind, which is the 78th Sturm-Division, or Assault Division, which has shown up in a few video games lately, namely in Steel Division 2, where it's one of the divisions the game launched with. And in that game, it is mostly characterized by lots of assault rifles as well as big infantry squads. And that makes sense because it's called a Sturm Division, so probably had a lot of STG-44s. Now, obviously, the portrayal in Steel Division 2 is based on the iteration of the division in June 1944, where it fought its biggest and also kind of final battle in many ways. Namely, it was directly in the path of Operation Bagration, the assault in Belorussia, which turned into the biggest defeat the Germans suffered during World War II in many ways. And it was destroyed in this battle and then later reconstituted as a Volksgrenadier Division, but we will talk about that a bit later. But when it was reconstituted, as far as I can tell, it did not have the old experimental organization. And this is what we will be looking at today. What the hell is a Sturmdivision actually? The 78th Sturm Division was created from the 78th Infantry Division in the beginning of 1943, and this document here shows what they were actually trying to do. It says here, meeting notes for the commander's meeting on January 16, 1943, 9 a.m. General, this is where it begins here. 78th Assault Division, initially the Army's only assault division. The High Command, OKH, intends to establish an independent SS Assault Brigade and an Assault Battalion. This 78th Assault Division is a highly operational unit with 100% mobility. It is a focal point in attack. Due to its structure and equipment, it is particularly suitable for operational flank protection. In defense, it acts as a breakwater in the face of strong enemy attacks and as a tank terror in the face of strong enemy tank attacks. It also serves as a crystallization point for foreign splinter units in crisis situations. Therefore, it is particularly well equipped with heavy weapons. Note here, when it says foreign splinter units, it means German units, not foreign units. It means German units that have been destroyed by a strong Russian attack, and now they're going back in disarray, and they can crystallize around this unit. So that's the idea. Third, the 78th Assault Division is initially a kind of experimental division. Therefore, teething issues in its structure, equipment, etc. remain likely. Yeah? However, all subsequent proposed modifications must fundamentally take into account the current overall personnel and material situation, which necessitates restrictions, especially in the personnel area. And then it says here that a new logo will be made, which we looked at in the intro. Now, a typical infantry division on the Eastern Front in 1943 kind of looked like this. You had your regiments, and each regiment had 3 battalions, which each had 3 infantry or grenadier companies at this point, and 1 heavy one. And then there were some heavy weapons like mortars and AT guns and so on assigned. For example, here AT guns. And then you had the artillery in their own regiment, obviously, and various other support units here. And at this point, they usually, they didn't have any tanks of their own, or assault guns, or things like that, only sometimes, or very rarely. Normally, those were towed assets. In comparison, this is the organization of the 78th Sturmdivision. So you had 3 regiments here. The 14th, 195th, and the 215th, which were all called Sturm Regiment. And each of them, in this initial February 1943 organization, only had 1 battalion. So 1 battalion in each of these, and this battalion consisted of 4 so-called grenadier companies, or basic Sturm companies as they called them later. So instead of having 3 battalions, they had 1. And in addition to that, however, they had tons of heavy weapons, and the battalions themselves also were structured kind of differently. If we zoom in here, each company had 2 medium mortars, fair enough, and 6 heavy anti-tank guns, so 75mm PaK 40. So every company had these anti-tank guns, which was completely new and unusual at the time. They were not in their own unit. And then there were these 2 heavy companies here, again with medium mortars and flak and so on. They were directly attached here. So these were very heavy in heavy weapons down to a low level, including the light howitzers. So as you can see here, the 10.5 centimeter howitzers were directly assigned to each regiment. They were not in the normal artillery unit. The normal artillery unit still existed, the artillery battalion I should say. It had the heavy howitzers here, towed, and it had the Stutz, so it had this battalion of Stutz, or battery of Stutz, and it also had the flak here. Yeah, and the flak here, right? So this was completely weird, especially having the Stutz directly under the artillery. In addition to that, it also had a Marder tank hunting company, which was supposed to be equipped with the Marder 2. The Marder 2 being this improvised vehicle of a PaK 40 on top of a Panzer II chassis. And what's also interesting is that, by the way, each of these heavy PaKs was supposed to be towed by an RSO, an Raupenschlepper Ost. This is this vehicle, a fully tracked towing vehicle for the conditions, the roadless conditions on the Eastern Front. So this is what they meant with 100% mobility. Now if we look at, and another thing, a heavy mortar battalion was also added with 12 centimeter mortars, which were a copy of the Russian 12 centimeter mortar. Now, if we look at their weapons at this point, there were 320 MG42s, 10,200 rifles, 10 sniper rifles, 171 rifle grenade launchers, 3,850 pistols, and 679 machine pistols. Now, they were not part of the MKB-42 assault rifle tests that would start a bit later. So this was a completely different experimental organization with a different kind of goal. So even though they were called a Sturm-Division, they did not initially have anything to do with the SDG-44 development. In fact, if we zoom in more and look at one of the platoons that would make up a Sturm company, you will see that it is actually more similar to a Panzer Grenadier unit. So one of their platoons would look like this. Note that I have not added, because they were not part of the documents, I have not added sniper rifles or rifle grenade equipment here. But basically you had your normal 3 squads, but these squads were pretty big for 1943, namely they had 13 people in each squad. Which is unusual, because by this time it was pretty standard for the German infantry squad to be down to 10 or 9 people. So this already is kind of unusual, and they had 2 light machine guns, MG42s, in each squad, with the assistant not having a rifle but a pistol, which is still something that was taken from older organizations. There was only 1 submachine gun, so the automatic firepower came from the light machine gun. So this is still kind of an older concept, not the new one that they tried out with the SDG-44 or the MKB-42 at this time. Now, one thing I will mention is that this organization with the huge squads, I believe, was probably only used right in the beginning of this unit's history, because they would suffer heavy losses soon. By 1944, during the Operation Bagration battles, I believe they were probably down to the normal 9 people, but still used the 2 light machine guns for additional firepower. So, as was often the case with the Germans, the division wasn't even completely finished when they actually already threw it into battle in early 1943, at the end of February. So while it was still building up, because there was an emergency. And they used this in order to gain experience with their new organization, and it didn't go well. I'm going to read here. Deployment of the 78th Assault Division from February 27th to March 15th, 1943, and preliminary experiences regarding the current war structure and organization. First deployment, that's here. The division, along with the elements of the combat squadron, two reinforced assault regiments, unloaded in Orgel or whatever, was assigned to the 46th Panzer Corps on February 26, 1943, and deployed to prevent an enemy breakthrough near Mitrosk, 78 kilometers southwest of Orel. Significant elements of the combat squadron: 1st Assault Regiment, Heavy Artillery Battalion, Heavy Grenade Launcher Battalion, Tank Destroyer Battalion, and the Reinforcement Squadron were still in transport or in transit. The advance of the reinforced 14th and 215th Assault Regiments towards Mitrosk was partly carried out by uninterrupted day and night marches and severely hampered by one-way, heavily drifted roads and severe snowstorms. The developing situation near Mitrosk necessitated the immediate deployment of the assault units, with elements deployed forward in motorized transport without horses or vehicles for attacks with a limited objective without prior preparation. At this point, by the way, I want to extend a wholehearted fuck you to whoever wrote this report, and with all these brackets, he puts brackets everywhere. I don't know why he does that. It makes it so weird to read. But okay, never mind. In order to prevent the imminent enemy breakthrough on Mitrosk, it was not possible to wait for the arrival of heavy weapons and artillery. The attacks were carried out against superior enemy forces, some of which had a significant advantage in combat readiness. The attacks were significantly hampered by snow, sometimes chest-deep, blizzards, and forest and ravine terrain, again in brackets, low mountain range. The troops' extreme fatigue and numerous cases of frostbite, wet winter clothing freezing to the body, caused by the changing weather, made the attack even more difficult. For the reasons stated above, the successful attacks against tenacious, continuously reinforcing enemy resulted in significant losses among the grenadier and engineer companies of the 14th and 215th Assault Regiments. During the subsequent defense, the heavily wooded and ravine terrain hampered the full utilization of heavy weapons. Now, we can look at both their successes and their losses here. So they captured 986 people, counted 4,486 dead, estimated 950 more dead, destroyed 60 34s, 12 guns, 27 AT guns, 96 mortars, 100 something heavy machine guns, 238 light machine guns, 163 machine pistols, 100 something anti-tank rifles, or possibly, now that I look at it, maybe it's just 12. I don't like whoever made this report. 1,203 rifles and 48 automatic rifles. So their own losses in the same span of time are, well, you can see here, dead. Again here, this is supposed to be 310. Wounded, missing, and sick, partly with frostbite. And it says here that their own material losses were relatively low. Still, it's, I think, safe to say that the division, even though it wasn't finished yet and wasn't properly used, was completely bled out at this point. Now, it says here, then again, preliminary experience. And I will not read all of this, but some interesting things here, which is why this division didn't actually work. In the attack, the assault regiment, with its 1 grenadier battalion and 4 grenadier companies, has insufficient striking power for the attack. Even with a narrow striking wedge of just 1 company deployed at the front, the width of the attack forces the deployment of another or even 2 companies alongside. This quickly causes the regiment to lose the necessary strength to sustain the attack from the deep. The necessary screening to the flanks is neglected. The reserves of the battalion and regiment commanders are inevitably abandoned prematurely and are missing for the decisive action. Conclusion. An increase in the infantry striking power by at least 2 companies is necessary. This results in the need for a second battalion staff. Each grenadier battalion would ideally consist of a headquarters with an infantry engineer platoon and 3 assault companies, which is close to what a normal infantry unit is, by the way. So their conclusion here is that, we just should keep doing what we're doing. In defense, the width of an assault battalion, and thus the width of the regiment in defense, will generally not need to be less than 6 kilometers, taking Russian conditions into account. This command and control resources of a battalion headquarters are insufficient for this width. Furthermore, this wide sector cannot be monitored by a single battalion commander. Given the terrain difficulties, this width will usually require the deployment of all 4 grenadier companies, meaning that neither the battalion nor the regiment commander will have sufficient reserves. Conclusion: an increase in the infantry by at least 2 companies and 1 battalion headquarters is necessary. So, same thing here. Next up, it says here the Grenadier Battalion. The structure of the assault regiment, consisting of 1 Grenadier Battalion and 4 assault companies, has proven itself ineffective in terms of strength and command, neither in attack nor in defense. In terms of infantry, the 4 companies are disproportionate to the heavy weapons of the regiment or division. The heavy weapons would be sufficient for larger combat width, both in attack and defense, than the current infantry combat strength. This is particularly evident in the defense, where the assault regiment, in its current structure, cannot even occupy the same sector width as an ordinary infantry regiment. So, yeah, as you can see here, this was basically a failure. It is not all completely doom and gloom, though. They talk here about the lower level organization, namely the Grenadier Company. The structure of the Grenadier Company has generally proven effective. The integration of heavy anti-tank guns is appropriate. In terms of leadership, however, leading a Grenadier Company of 6 platoons is too much for a company commander. Since some of the heavy anti-tank guns must be deployed in depth, the company command is beyond the company commander's responsibility. But they say down here they should not take away any of the heavy pack. They really like those. So, we will look at what they actually changed. So, these are 2 different organizations for the Sturm Regiment, and this is the one they wanted to have. And if we look here now, we have 2 battalions now, each with their own staff here. And these battalions only have 3 Sturm companies. So, the battalion was weakened, but not really, so it was split up. What we can see here, by the way, is that they were supposed to have the 18 light machine guns for the 2 per squad. And the heavy anti-tank guns are still there, but only 3 instead of 6. And some of them have been moved over to a separate heavy company here, with 6 heavy anti-tank guns, medium mortars additionally here, and, some other stuff like that. Now, but this is what they initially actually didn't completely switch to this organization, but also had the 2 infantry battalions here, but apparently with a heavy company still attached. So basically they switched to the normal infantry organization and had the heavy company still split up. In the end, what makes this division still unique, of course, are these heavy anti-tank guns that they have, and some of the other differences. But all in all, I would say that this was kind of a failed experiment, and this is also the reason why no other Sturm-Division was ever created. Instead, they went with the SDG-44 concept. Now, as I said, in Steel Division 2, they do actually have a ton of SDG-44s, and that was kind of that division's thing when that game came out. So let's look at the same division actually a year later, more than a year later I should say, at the eve of the big Russian offensive that ultimately proved to be its undoing. So this is the 78th Sturm-Division, actually on D-Day, so this was filed on the 6th of June 1944, so obviously they were on the Eastern Front and not hit by D-Day. And now we can already zoom in here, and what we can see is that they did stay with this organization they initially went with and not the one they planned. So they have 2 of these battalions here at relatively low strength, 83% here, 74% here. This one is at 90. But still, because of that, I don't really believe that they had these huge amounts of men per squad. What you can also see here is that the light machine gun count is not actually as high as they wanted. So there's no 18 light machine guns. You can see 6 here only. You can see 8 here, 11 here, which is kind of average, I guess. And this one only has 3. But that has a special meaning behind it. Now, as you can see, the PAC were apparently kind of pulled out of these companies, because you can see the RSO here and the heavy PAC, so 5. No, wait, these are actually infantry guns, I think. But yeah, so you can see the 9 PAC here, which is still quite high with RSOs. Right, so the PAC were also pulled out. So in many ways, what made this division special was already gone by June 1944. In many ways, it remained a relatively normal but coolly named infantry division here. Now, you can see that the Marders are still here, but the Stucks are still here. And the Panzerjägerabteilung actually also has Marders here, and also 88s apparently, which is kind of unique. And the artillery was not attached to each of these units anymore. This is a normal artillery layout with the 10.5 centimeters and the 15 centimeters in their own units. Fairly normal stuff. Now, if we look down here, there is some interesting stuff here. So rifles, sniper rifles, G41s, pistols, and here we have the machine pistols, and 105 of these were MP44, so not a lot. And then rifle grenade launchers here. Now, number 2, there's kind of a little annotation here, MP44s. If we look here, equipped with MP44 was 1 company. And this is a company that only had 3 light machine guns. This looks to me like they were probably completely equipped with MP44s and had the light machine guns in reserve, possibly, or as you can imagine, 1 per platoon then. It is kind of wrong in Steel Division. This Sturm-Division, despite the name, was not equipped with tons of MP44s. They had 1 company that was equipped with it, and the rest probably had a variation of that organization that I showed you earlier, but probably due to the lack of light machine guns, it looked basically like a normal grenadier company with 1 machine gun per squad in most cases. This is the 78th Sturm-Division, the only one, and quite a disappointment apparently to the Germans. Didn't work out as intended. Now, one thing I will mention is that, as I said, this was destroyed during Bagration, and later it was recreated as a Volksgrenadier division. I have not found their documents, to be honest. They might be lost. That said, just at the end of the war, in the beginning of 1945, they were actually renamed once more to, and this makes it even more confusing, they were actually renamed to 78th Volkssturm-Division. Not a Volkssturm Division, a Volkssturm Division. So it has nothing to do with the Volkssturm, but they wanted to have the Sturm Division name back, but they still wanted the Volks from Volksgrenadier. So yeah, this is kind of the height of absurdity, and probably caused a lot of confusion. Obviously there were no actual Volkssturm divisions, because that was just a militia based on battalions. So yeah, really weird division. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.